Hello everyone, my name is Ronald S. Lamata, a licensed professional teacher from the Philippines. And I am a learner, of course, an educator, and also your presenter for today. Now I'm going to discuss about extensive reading. So it came from the book Teaching ESL, or Teaching English for a Second Language, or English as a Foreign Language in Reading and Writing by ISP Nation. But before we start, I would like to offer you some coffee, okay? So do not worry because this is non-acidic or something, but I want you to offer, or I want you to have this. First, consider God's new mercies and compassion. Next, offer thanks to Him. Forgive your debtors, then ask God to forgive your debts. Follow peace. Exhale the struggles of yesterday, and of course, encourage yourself. So, as you listen to my presentation, please have yourself a cup of coffee. Now, extensive reading fits into the meaning focused input and fluency development strands of a course, depending on the level of the books that the learners read. When the book contains only a few unknown vocabulary and grammar items, extensive reading provides the conditions for meaning focused input. Where the books are very easy ones with virtually no unknown items, extensive reading provides the conditions for fluency development. All right. Now, this chapter will also examine the research on graded readers to draw up a set of guidelines for setting up and managing extensive reading programs. Okay? Reading is a source of learning and a source of enjoyment. Yes, that is correct. However, because of the nature of reading and learning from reading, a reading development program will benefit from careful planning and monitoring. Now, there are two major language-based reasons for this. First things first, reading requires considerable knowledge and skill. This knowledge includes recognizing the letters and words of the language, having a large vocabulary and substantial grammatical and textual knowledge, being able to bring knowledge of the world to the reading task, and developing a degree of fluency with the reading skill. Second, learning through extensive reading is largely incidental learning. That is, the learner's attention is focused on the story. Again, the learner's attention is focused on the story and not on items to learn. As a result, learning gains tends to be fragile, and thus it is important to have quantity of input with substantial opportunities for vocabulary repetition. Okay? Now, in this chapter or in this part, we are uh, we are going to talk about the organized set of guidelines for planning a program. Now, understand the goals first and limitations of extensive reading. Extensive reading is a form of learning from meaning-focused input. So during extensive reading, learners should be interested in what they are reading and should be reading with their attention on meaning of the text rather than on learning the language features of the text. So there is now plenty of evidence according to Ellie of 1991 in their study that reading can result in a variety of substantial proficiency gains. Okay? So however, it is important to note that these gains requires considerable time and effort. So extensive reading can occur within class time, okay, or outside class time. In their very useful survey of extensive reading with Day and Bamford of 1998, they conducted also a research. It characterized extensive reading as involving a large quantity of varied, self-selected, enjoyable reading at a reasonably fluent speed. Now, In their classic study of extensive reading, Ellie and Mangumbay had 8 to 10 years old learners read in class time for no more than 30 minutes per day each school day for almost 8 months. Okay, now the results were remarkable with learners rather making the equivalent of 15 months gain in 8 months. Okay, so meaning to say from 15 months, they should practice it for 15 months, but because of their continuous reading effort, they were able to gain it for like 8 months. Okay, so however, the time involved was substantial, but not beyond the means of an English as a foreign language situation. Now, find your learner's present vocabulary level. This is very important, guys. Extensive reading can occur if 95 to 98% of the running words in a text are already familiar to the learner or are no burden to the learner. So this is according to their study. This is from Hugh and Nation of 2000. The clear message from this is that for learners of English to do extensive reading at the elementary and intermediate stages of proficiency, it is essential that they read graded readers that have been specially prepared for learners of English. It is only by reading such texts that learners can have the density of known words that is essential for extensive reading. Okay, so graded readers typically cover a range of levels beginning at around 300 to 500 words and going to around 2000 to 2500 words. Now, provide next is you need to provide plenty of interesting and appropriate reading text. According to Hill, uh, he provided a very useful list of what he considers to be the best graded readers, and this is a very valuable starting point in building a collection of graded readers. As there is no recent report of what learners enjoy most, it is worth collecting data on this. The Extensive Reading Foundation website, www.erfoundation or Extensive Reading Foundation.org, is also an excellent source of award-winning graded reader titles. Okay, if an extensive reading program is to be successful, it must provide books that learners are interested in reading or that will develop their interest in reading. Teachers' judgments of books are likely to be different from learners' judgment of books. Again, teachers' judgments of books are likely to be different from learners' judgments of books, and learners' judgments should get priority. So it's not about the teacher, it's all about the learner. Now, another one is you need to set, encourage, and monitor large quantities of extensive reading. Research on the vocabulary covered by different numbers of graded readers suggests that learners need to read many books in order to gain control of the high frequency words of English, preferably at the rate of a graded reader every 1 or 2 weeks. In an extensive reading program, reading should be the main activity and other activities should occupy only a very small portion of the time so that the time is not taken away from reading. So for this reason, most extensive reading programs do not require learners to do elaborate comprehension tests or exercises on the books they read. So meaning to say, the reading alone is already their type of test. So generally, learners are simply required to fill out a short record from indicating the name of the book they have just read, its level, the date, how long it took to read, and of course, a brief comment on the quality of the book. Was it a good story? Would you recommend it to others? Something like that. And then 12 or more of of these short reports forms can be printed on one piece of A4 paper, allowing the learners and the teacher to see at a glance how much has been read over what period of time. So we really need to keep an update of the learner's profile. Support and supplement extensive reading with language-focused learning and fluency development. So it's not just about reading and reading, but we need to have supplemental extensive reading. One of the most useful ways in which the course can support extensive reading is by providing training in reading faster. Okay, so this is a very challenging way of how we wanted to engage our learners to read. A speed reading program involves the learners reading texts that are well within their language knowledge. That is, they contain no unknown vocabulary or grammatical features. A good reading speed is around 250 words per minute. Most learners without training read at at less than 100 words per minute. Okay, so one way an extensive reading program can contribute to the proficiency development is through vocabulary growth. This can be encouraged in extensive reading by making the vocabulary learning more deliberate and less incidental. So care needs to be taken. However, that this vocabulary learning goal does not overshadow reading for pleasure. Okay, so we read, it's not just about for pleasure, but we read because we have this goal. Okay, so we really need to emphasize that we are reading not for pleasure, but we have a goal, and that goal is to learn. Okay, so we also need to help learners move systematically through the graded reader levels. So Nation and Wang, in a detailed study of 42 graded readers in the Oxford Bookworms series, reached the following conclusions considering only the aim of vocabulary learning. So number one, learners should read at least one graded reader every week. So no matter what level they are reading at, okay? So this rate of reading allows unknown vocabulary to be repeated before the immediately previous occurrence is forgotten. Number two, learners should read at least 5 books at a level. So let's say level 2, okay? So before moving to books at the next level, which is level 3, this number of books provide a chance for most of the vocabulary introduced at the level to occur. Next is number 3, learners should read more books at the later levels than the earlier. This is because the vocabulary of the earlier levels occur very frequently in the books at the later levels. Books at the later levels thus provide good conditions for learning all the vocabulary of the graded reader series. Now, we also have other ways of supporting extensive reading. Okay? So, not all text for extensive reading needs to be simplified texts, as there are other ways of helping with the vocabulary load of extensive reading. So, this includes glossing, computer assisted reading, and of course, elaborating. So, let's discuss one by one. Glossing involves providing meaning of words in one or in a simple language, second language definition in the margin next to the line containing an unknown word. Okay, so computer-based assisted reading also is one of the best computer-assisted reading programs, can be found on Tom Cobb's website www.lextutor.ca. So you just look under the heading read with resources. And then the learner pastes in a text, click build, and then starts reading. Now, by clicking once on a word, a spoken word of the word can be heard. Okay? By clicking twice, several concordance examples appear. Now, this additional context can help with guessing the word's meanings from context clues. Now, we also have elaboration. Elaboration involves the rewriting of texts, but it involves adding to the original text rather than removing or replacing what is there. Okay, the unknown words in the text are in effect glossed in the text itself. Now, some glossaries come at the end of a text, but learners prefer glosses near the unknown word, probably because these do not disrupt reading too much. In Japan, some English texts are printed with translations in a lighter type above the low frequency word in the text. Okay? So glosses may contribute to vocabulary learning and may improve comprehension of the text. Now, the extensive reading program. This discussion of guidelines for an extensive reading program has focused mainly on learning conditions, and of course, research has not given attention to more practical factors such as how to organize and manage a library of graded readers, how to obtain graded readers, and how many needed to set up a library. Now, these issues are well covered in Day and Bamford. The main purpose of this chapter is to convince teachers that it is worthwhile setting up an extensive program, making it a substantial obligatory part of a course, and persisting with it in an organized way. The results of such programs are very impressive, actually. Now, let's look about the assessment. Okay, so assessment, we have here the practical applications. So use assessment to find out how well students are reading and also how to help them read better. Okay, so choose a method of assessment appropriate for the level and type of student. Higher order questions take the form of how and why rather than what. When choosing materials for assessing non-native speakers, be mindful of words and concepts that might be unfamiliar. So there are actually two forms of reading assessment. The first is to find out how well children are reading in order to help them improve. So this is what we call diagnosis. Diagnostic tests or diagnostic assessment is about giving feedback and assistance to learners. The second is measure how much progress has been made. Both forms of assessment are needed for effective reading instruction. Now, in the beginning, reading assessment is normally done by listening to students reading aloud. Excuse me. Teachers assess word recognition and fluency in this way. Beyond this stage, assessment should focus primarily on text comprehension. Now, to find out how well children are reading in order to help them improve, that is diagnosis. To measure how much progress has been made. In beginning reading, assessment is normally done by listening to students reading aloud. Okay? So text comprehension is usually assessed through questions. Now, questions should focus on main ideas and viewpoints, not on the minor details. These are called higher order questions. Methods of assessment vary with the types of responses students make to the questions. The students' responses can be spoken or written. Written responses can be in the form of a multiple choice response, short answers, or extending pieces of writing. Materials used for assessing reading should ideally be authentic and they should reflect the type of reading normally encountered in daily life. And that ends my presentation. Thank you so much. If you have questions, elaborations, or discussions, you can actually just comment and we'll try to give our best to answer these questions. Thank you so much and good day to you all.